Good afternoon. So my name is Ludovic. I work for the FAO of the United Nations, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. I'm quite pleased to be here because I was among you a few years back, many years back. I was a student in the vet school and I went out of vet school in 2001, so I'm quite pleased to be back in my veterinary school. I'm an epidemiologist. I've been working for 7 years in Rome at FAO in the Crisis Management Center, Animal Health, one of the response units in animal health. And I'm now based in Jerusalem, working on the sanitary and phytosanitary program for Palestine. So I'm going to show you the FAO and climate change and basically show you one field example because I think you know basically what are the mandates and the strategies of each of the organizations, but I think a field example could be quite interesting for you to see. So what is the UN system? This is the UN system. It's a galaxy of things that maybe, I think the person that basically did the diagram, like, you cannot find him. I don't know where you get all of the information about the UN. I have some UN organization that I have never heard about, and FAO is here. One of the few technical organizations, such as WHO, and FAO was created, so it's the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, created in 1945 at the creation of the United Nations, and they were based in Washington, D.C. until 1951, where FAO was located in Rome. We have 194, so if there is a mistake on the slide, 194 member country, and you find offices in about 130 locations in the world. So you have a huge network of offices of FAO, which is quite interesting for an international organization. And as you know, the main goal is to stop hunger in the world. That's the main motto of FAO. So that's basically everything that FAO does is, the main goal is to stop hunger in the world. The mission is basically a technical mission. Okay? FAO is here to provide technical guidance to member countries. So we have technical staff. I don't know why you have stall. It should be staff. And publication of reports and communication. So basically we try to use the scientific information and translate it into something that can be used by the developing countries. Okay? You don't want to push any solution that works in Europe or in the US and think it's going to work in Africa. That would be stupid. You have to understand the specificity of the countries you're trying to advise, and doing so you have to translate any type of options, even if those options would be not suitable for Europe, in those countries in order to help them being more developed. Okay? That's one of the goals. So the thing is like giving advice and guidance on technical issues, and it's also a place where countries can share expertise, because you have field expertise that is highly valuable, not the expertise from the publication, but from the field. So FAO is also a place where countries can share their knowledge and their expertise, and the solutions that work in the countries might be also applicable in other countries. So it's also interesting to have those countries talk to each other. And being a technical agency, we tend to get out of the political issues, not always, but we tend to try to get out of the political issues between countries. For example, I work now in Palestine, and you of course know the issues between Palestine and Israel. FAO can be a good platform in order for Israeli and Palestinians to meet and discuss some technical issues in animal health without any political issues involved. Okay? So it's also a peace-building activity, if you look at it that way. I just talked about the neutral meeting for member countries or non-member countries. It's a safe place for countries to speak out and speak their mind. And as I said, the knowledge that is brought to the countries has to be practical. Okay? solutions that are highly efficient in Europe might not be efficient in some other countries. So you have to be flexible enough to adapt solutions that you know in other settings, and that's basically what FAO tries to do. So, to your knowledge, why is climate change an utmost importance for FAO's mandate? Why do you think climate change will be something FAO would work on? From the information that you got this morning. What is one of the human activities that is bringing gas in the atmosphere? Agriculture, livestock, okay? Those are the main mandates that FAO is pushing. Like we tend to try to have agriculture in the front page. We tend to have the livestock industry in the front page because you have to feed people, right? So you see the contradiction somehow in terms of goals, in terms of pushing on the agenda of some country the access to food, okay, so livestock or agriculture, and to try to lower the impacts of those activities in the climate. Okay. So basically, everything that I'm going to present in terms of FAO's mandate, FAO's position on climate change, you have to take into account that the first thing remains true, that FAO's mandate is there to lower the impact of hunger in the world. So you don't forget livestock and agriculture activities, but you try to make them more eco-friendly. Okay? I'm going to go really quickly on the the strategy and some of the activities of FAO on climate change, because I think you can all find the information in more details on Google if you want to find that information interesting. And I will give me more time to give you a practical example that you might not find on the internet. So if you are interested about the climate change and what FAO is doing, basically we keep the same objectives that before. So we try to increase the capacity of the member countries to get to control, the factors that are impacting climate change. Okay, and same as before, FAO remains a provider of knowledge and guidelines and expertise to those countries. So I think you had a question this morning about the PVS and how the PVS was mandatory or not. Remember, the international organization don't have the right to force a country to go away or another in terms of development. It's not the goal of the international organization. You provide advice, and the country remain, free to choose. Okay? If you're good at providing advice, maybe we'll follow your advice. But that's still the nation's prevailing right to do whatever they want. So the UN is not there to impose anything. Okay? We provide a solution and different options. Okay? So that's what we do. We try to provide technical knowledge and expertise. As I said before, climate change and the control of the factors that are allowing the climate to change. We try to integrate also food security and nutrition, agriculture, forestry, fisheries. Some of the activities, human activities that have been shown to have a huge impact on climate change. Okay? So it's trying to find new solutions to allow production with a lower impact of climate change. And of course, we try to have a better coordination of our activities on the subject, which is not a primary subject for the organization. So if you want to find some of the work that has been done up to now, you have this nice leaflet that you can find online. Basically, some of the activities that have been done and work that have been done by FAO of climate change are listed here, like sustaining and promoting agroforestry. So instead of destroying the forest to do agriculture, you keep most of the forest and you tend to have a mix of forest and agriculture. So you keep the coverage. You have assessment also of impacts of climate change of fisheries, how we do fisheries and how it impacts climate change and the environment. FAO is member of many, many different agendas, meetings, groups to decrease the impact, to ensure, to lower, climate change in the future. FAO's main point of contact are the ministries of agriculture. Okay, so most of the time, FAO also acts as an advisor in terms of adapting or modifying national policies, to put within the national policies, to think about within the national policies of food safety and climate change. So not only to focus on the development, but to focus on a safer development for the environment. FAO is also engaged in terms of genetic diversity that can be really impacted, have bad impact in terms of following the climate change and the rise of temperatures. And also the last 2 points, reducing the emissions linked to some of the activities that are done to increase the production in the agriculture segment and to avoid food waste. Those are a few examples. If you're more interested into knowing what FAO is doing in the climate change area, you have many, many areas where FAO is involved. You can find that easily in Google. So let's go to a field experience. Where do you think this picture was taken? Just name a country, an area, region. Where do you think this really nice picture of a lake and vegetation was taken? Africa? I heard Africa. Europe, so I heard Europe. France. This is the second picture. So it's not, well, it can be Europe? No, maybe not. Yeah, so it was taken in Africa, and I'm going to show you what this place should look if you didn't have climate change. Okay, you're going to be amazed. We've talked this morning about the wrong impact of climate change, but in some places, well, you had a bad impact in this case also, but in some cases you also have another impact that can be increased feed accessibility to some of the species. Okay, and that's what we see here, because this is Mauritania, and this is the middle of the desert in Mauritania, and I'm going to show you a picture taken from space where there is no green around, it's just desert. Okay? And the camel you've seen before should be in the middle of the sand dunes. It shouldn't be in the middle of plants. Okay? And that's also one factor, one impact or results of climate change. So basically what happened in the Crisis Management Center, which is the unit in FAO HQ in Rome that deals with crisis, they got a phone call because some people were dying of an hemorrhagic disease in the middle of the desert in Mauritania. Okay. We didn't have any outbreak of Ebola in Western Africa at that time, so we didn't think about Ebola. But we didn't know what it was because hemorrhagic disease, well, it was not possible. It could not be possible to be a vector-borne disease. You're in the middle of the Sahara, you don't have any vector. So it was quite obvious for us at the beginning when we get the phone call that it might be a false alarm, maybe a foodborne poisoning, because the news were mentioning that the people were eating camel meat that seemed a bit unfit for consumption. So we're thinking that it might be a non-use. Okay? This is the area that I showed you from space. There is no oasis, and the camel must be lost in the sand. Okay? The desert shouldn't be green, and it was a green desert. So basically what happened, when you see for these two sites in Mauritania, is that we got the appearance of a disease that was mentioned this morning, Rift Valley fever. And that's quite interesting for Rift Valley fever, is that the main risk factors are heavy rains. You need the mosquito and of course the virus. And also you need susceptible animals and human population. In that case, susceptible animals and human population, you can find them, because when I'm going to show you what we found in the field, those people had never seen a mosquito before. those people in Mauritania didn't have malaria, for example. In southern Mauritania was infected by malaria. Because the climatic condition would not allow any vector-borne disease or parasite to be carried to this population. Okay? Mosquitoes in the area were thinking it was not possible, but actually, as you saw, lots of water, it was totally possible. And the heavy rains caused the collection of the water in the area of Mauritania. And when you see the epicycle, I'm sorry for the non-technical people, basically you have few animals, see, when you have flooding or heavy rains. The Aedes that were mentioned by my colleague from OIE this morning, they can carry the virus for a long period. And those eggs hatch. You have Aedes species infecting the cattle and ruminants. And then other mosquito species like Culex playing another role as increasing the amount of virus in the environment and increasing the transmission rate between the animals. And then you have, unfortunately, human cases. And for Rift Valley fever, the interesting thing is like humans are the revelator of the disease. You start hearing about the disease in the animals maybe 2 to 3 weeks after having the first cases of hemorrhagic disease in the animal. Okay? So this is a regular setting for Rift Valley fever. So you have water, like susceptible population, humans. And what is also important is this mud, because Aedes lay eggs in the mud when the water goes down. Okay? So it's also really important for them for the drying factor of the collection of water, because that's where the Aedes is going to lay its eggs in the future. So you would say Mauritania, for those that know Rift Valley fever, Mauritania has been affected in the past by Rift Valley fever. Of course, it was affected by Rift Valley, but it was close to the Senegal River. Senegal River is in the south of the country. When you go to see the Senegal River, you have trees, you have grass. It's more like a European type environment. Lots of water, lots of mosquitoes, and lots of animals going between Senegal and Mali. And usually the disease goes back and forth between the three countries. And you see that they have had quite a lot of outbreaks between 87, 98 to 02. As mentioned this morning, Rift Valley fever usually occurs every 7 years, which makes it hard to control, to make vaccination programs, for example. But lately, we've seen a reoccurrence of the disease way more often since 2012, actually, 2010. So what happened? Lots of rain in those places. And those places, those people saw two different factors, two different diseases coming into the villages. They first got malaria that they never saw before. And at the same time, they got Rift Valley fever. And I can tell you that the death rate in those villages was quite important. Like you've seen lots of, you had families that basically disappeared of those villages following introduction of both malaria and Rift Valley fever. So yes, climate change can cause the desert to become green, and the desert becoming green can also bring vector-borne disease into highly susceptible population that had never been in touch with some of the pathogens that they would bring. And you had lots of mosquitoes in this area where maybe a few months before you would never have found one mosquito. So still, I love those kind of... So what happened basically also is that, of course, so this is the south of Mauritania where you have basically the virus circulating at a lower level regularly. It's an environment that is totally suitable for the parasite, for the vectors and for the virus. And every 7 years you have new outbreaks in the area, and between the 7 years, in between, you have a low level circulation of the virus in the area. So in Mauritania, when you're a farmer, you move your animals when you hear that there is feed available somewhere. Okay? That's a really dry country. Basically, all of this is desert. Okay. So if you have camels, if you have animals, you need to feed them, you go by here. So the huge amount, basically the outbreaks occurred here in Attar. Basically, when you have camels and you need to feed them, and maybe in the south at the same period you don't have access to feed so easily, what happens, you take a big truck, you charge it with your camels, and you go up to north. It takes a few hours. Okay? Doing that, you might have animals that are carrier of the disease, and have some amount of protection, carrier of the virus, sorry. They might have some amount of protection, but still carrying it, bringing the virus north, but the population has never seen the Rift Valley fever virus. Okay? And so what happens is like, you find dead camels in the desert. Well, not so desert because it's green, but you still find lots of dead camels, a bit everywhere. Okay? And when you talk to the people that were infected, they were seeing that lots of trucks were coming with camels because it was good access to feed, and some of the family members became sick. And the thing with Rift Valley fever is like at the beginning or even during the outbreak, as you saw yesterday, the number of people dying is really low. But the symptoms you're going to show are like if you were infected by malaria. So the human health system, that is not a system that tests every people that has malaria, count the number of people showing malaria-like fever as malaria-like fever, when there might be Rift Valley fever linked, okay, fever. So the people that studied to get sick went to see the human health posts in the desert where they could have access to the treatment. There you don't have tests. They give you the treatment for malaria. And people were getting better, but they were getting better because they were recovering from Rift Valley fever. They were not recovering from malaria because they had the malaria medicine. Okay? So it was underreported, undernoticed, until the first people that were more susceptible to the virus, sensitive to the virus, began to show hemorrhagic symptoms. Okay. But it was already too late to do anything. And those people were showing symptoms, and they were the first one identified as Rift Valley fever. But we believe that the virus was already circulating in the human population because they had seen an increase of reporting of malaria-like fever in the population. So you can see also that you have, as we talked this morning, you have climate change, but also the outcome of the climate change of the disease that are important depends also on the structure of the public health, animal health structure in terms of surveillance and control or testing. I think I was way too fast. Thank you very much.